Welcome back, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed your lunches and the library awards, business meeting, all that fun. In this session, we'll be hearing from one more lightning talk from CLRC New Initiatives grant recipients, followed by 2 from ARPA grant recipients. Our first lightning talk will be roughly 11 minutes in total, similar to the other ones, 7 to 8 minutes of presentation, followed by 3 to 4 minutes of audience questions. The following 2 presentations will be longer at 20 minutes in total, with 15 to 17 minutes to present and 3 to 5 for questions. The 2 longer presentations will be from ARPA grant recipients. Our American Rescue Plan Act grants were provided from federal funding from the Institute of Museum and Library Services, funneled through the state library. Now, without further ado, so I don't use up any of their time, let's get to lightning talk. So Aneisa and Karin, come on up.
You got it. Good morning, or not, good afternoon. Afternoon. I'm Aneisa. This is Karin. We work together at the Westhill schools. I'm in the K1 building. Karin's in second, third, and fourth. Yes. And we did a grant for a summer reading program. We called it the Book Bonanza. And the impetus for this was we had been hearing from administration that there had been quite a lot of loss of literacy skills during the pandemic. And we wanted to think about how, as librarians, we could help with this. And so we came up with this idea to promote summer reading. And fortunately, CLRC was kind enough to give us a grant to get our program up and running and off the ground. Yes.
Okay, so we know and love especially our local Onondaga Free Public Library is amazing. They have so many great programs for kids in the summer. But when we were talking about it at one point, some of our kids just have a tough time getting there. And so we were trying to figure out, I think initially one of our early things was like a bookmobile where we would just like travel, and then
we really wanted a peacemobile.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure I could not drive it. You probably could because you're awesome, but I wouldn't be able to drive it. So we were trying to figure out how to like bring books to the kids if they wouldn't be able to get to the public library or even ours. Like I know some places will open their school libraries for like a couple hours in the summer. And we were just looking for something that would really bring the books to them.
So one of the things that we learned from our administration is that there were pockets where there was more sort of loss of literacy skills than others. And so we were looking for how can we get to those particular students. And one of the areas that we found where we could really help the most were the apartment building complexes in our district. And so our initial thought was we'll go to the apartment buildings. Hopefully they'll let us set something up and do like a reading of a book giveaway there.
So that was our initial thought. There's 4 apartment complexes kind of within our district boundaries. And actually my principal very nicely like made those initial contacts to see could we set up, what their thoughts were. And of the 4, 1 said no right away, 2 just never got back to us, but 1 was really enthusiastic and said, yes, definitely come. They even had like, they did a barbecue for the kids and like, it was very nice. But that was really just one of kind of our intended 4. And so as an additional step, we also contacted our local Parks and Rec just to see if we could use one of the park spaces too. And she was lovely and said that, yes, we could do that. So we had kind of the 2 things initially.
And fortunately, the one park where we set up, there's actually a trail from one of the apartment complexes to the park. So we felt like, well, at least, you know, if they wanted to, they could walk.
Yeah, transportation was an issue.
Yeah. So for our summer book bonanza, we needed sort of like the furniture of it. And you can see pictures of some of the things we purchased: tents, tables, we had camp chairs, signage, a cooler for trees. And so our grant money went to purchasing sort of these durables that we'll use year after year. And then our books that we purchased to give away, we purchased those with the scholastic funds from our book fair profits.
Yes. So this is just a couple pictures of the event in the park. do we want to talk about right now? Like, we did a couple, you know, it was our second summer that we did it last summer and then this past summer. And the Santero Park event was very well attended. It was kind of midsummer, late July. And so it was great for our families just to sort of reconnect too. Like some of them were able to see, you know, the kids were able to see each other and they haven't in about a month or whatever.
We
Yeah.
have,
Okay.
we happened to do it on a night that they
Yes.
had a lacrosse game there, and so there were already kids there for that game, and then we had additional kids come for the library, so it worked out well that the kids after their lacrosse game, they came over,
Yeah.
and so we had a large number of participants, and it was really successful.
Yeah. The apartment one, which we thought was gonna be our bread and
Yes.
butter, and the initial like impetus for the project, the timing just wasn't great, or I'm not
Mhm.
exactly sure.
Yeah.
The initial thing, they were happy to have us, but it had to be within like their 9 to 5 work hours, which I understand they wanted to be on site. And so that just wasn't really conducive to kids who might be at day camp or parents who were working. And so we tried it the first year and it was not as
Yeah.
well attended. And then we tried it this past year and it was all with the latest time they would let us be there. And so I think going forward, we're gonna focus on the Santero Park event because that's what really, it was a great event. So I'm glad we tried it and that'll kind of be our focus going forward, even though that wasn't our initial thought.
Yeah.
It's been really successful. So.
All right, so our tips for success, if you wanted to duplicate this program, is see if you can go to the apartment complexes, but if you have difficulty there, we found the local parks were great.
Yeah.
Try
Try to go on a lacrosse night. 'Cause that was
yeah,
wonderful.
that was
Yeah.
key.
Unexpectedly
Yes,
wonderful. And
yes.
so, we're lucky enough to have a kind of a joint PTO. And so while the funds are wonderful to cover like those durable items, doesn't really cover food. And so they were lovely enough to offer, just a little sweet treat for the kids as an extra incentive.
Yeah, and then we have, a lot of districts now have Parent Square or some other sort of texting communication system. And so we were able to send out reminders, on the day of the event, and I think that makes a huge difference for participation. Right? Question?
So I know you said you did it through the parent app. Are there any other ways you were promoting this? Did you start talking about it at the end of the school year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. And actually it was funny because the one, like from the first year to the second year, we had a little raffle giveaway and he sent me like a nice little basket. And one of the kids that went from her school to my school won it. And so at the end of the year, when we talked about summer reading and he had a lot to say about the fact that he won. And then I was out of the library for, some reason, and they like tracked me down. They're like, wait, what day was it? And when is it? I'm like, you're gonna get a flyer, it's fine. But so we did talk it up and things I think went home initially too, but it just, especially midsummer, was so much easier than trying to mail anything or
Absolutely.
the electronic communication.
Oh, that's key. Prizes too. They do get
Yeah.
excited about the
Yeah.
prizes.
Little raffle basket.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
So I know originally you reached out to 4 apartment complexes. So right now you're focused on the one park. Have you thought about expanding to other parks? Or you just gonna go all in on like one day, one park,
Well, there is a possibility. Our school also has a park. And we were thinking, well, because it's sort of in a different location, but it seems like the parks, like you get the same kids. So I feel like it would actually be the same kids just a second time.
yeah.
We talked about that. So, but we have thought about, well, where else could we
Yeah.
go?
We want to do a second, but so far the one's really working. So
Yeah.
Where did you get your books from and like how did you decide what book to get?
So we have, every time we do a school, like a school book fair, they'll give you the profits in books. And so between the two of us, what I found to be the most like cost efficient, I guess, was like they have the bundles of books, like they used to call them bruise books. I don't think they do anymore, or they'd have like grade level packs, like the 2, 3, and they were really quite reasonable. So we kind of just loaded up on those. And then, of course, like I think I got a couple packs of like the Babysitters Club and Dog Man. Those went in 2 seconds. But just a lot of we had stuff from, we service K4, but we knew there'd be older kids. and then younger kids. So we still had some, we try to just be mindful of that and have some board books and some older.
Yeah.
So
Some students come with their younger siblings or older siblings, so we do have a wide range.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Alyssa?
What did you choose like mid-July versus, you have these things in June?
Yeah.
Did you feel like doing it after school was out for a month, did you miss people, or did you do it in July because that's when the flies were happening?
I think it actually worked out based on our vacation
Yeah.
schedule
both
for the
free.
summer and when we were both free. But we both feel like that end of July time is perfect because the kids have been away from each other for a month. They were like really happy to see
Yeah.
each other and parents were like super excited
Yeah.
too. It just seemed like the perfect.
it was a little sweet spot.
Yeah.
And if they'd had books at home or if they'd gotten them, they kind of were over that. And so something kind of fresh and new for like the last 4 or 5 weeks of school was like welcome. So. Yeah.
That was wonderful, and I'm curious, what was the response of your administration?
Well,
Loved it.
they do love it. Well, it's funny. So, at the first year we did it, my school principal came and she was like expecting, some kids, but we literally had like
It was a
100
beautiful
kids.
night and it just worked out perfect. I
And
think we were
yeah.
surprised too. Like I didn't
Yeah.
know, I'm like books in the park. And we had such a great response. And so
Yes.
she's been
So she was super surprised, but delighted. And so it's been great.
yeah. And so we tried like at the end of this one too, just to
Mhm.
kind of, we put it in our district newsletter and sent them pictures the next day and said, thanks for your support. So yeah, they've been wonderful. So
Okay.
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you so much.
Hi, I am Donna Migliaccio. I'm the director of the Utica Children's Museum. This is actually the title of our grant award that we received from CLRC, and it was a mobile museum library tour. And this is what happens when you ask your marketing team to help you with a presentation and they put uncomfortable pictures up about you. But side notes, these gentlemen over here, they are the V twins. They're a group, an artist group, obviously musicians. There's a festival that's held in Utica, and they come twice. They've come so far, and they have this cult following. They're absolutely fantastic. They play the cello and the violin. It's all electrical, but they do like music to to entice all the kids, those kinds of things, like funk you up and that type of stuff on electrical. They're amazing. So, mobile museum. Little tidbit of information here about the Children's Museum and ICANN, who is also a nonprofit agency, Integrated Community Alternatives Network. The former museum was located at 311 Main Street in Utica, and ICANN is located at 310 Main Street. Obviously being neighbors, the museum was falling on some hard times financially and from an administrative perspective. And so the Community Foundation of Oneida and Herkimer counties reached out to ICANN, being the neighbor, to see if they would be able to do anything to help with the museum. And so ICANN got involved and started providing some administrative services, some marketing and development to kind of bring life back into the museum, and shortly realized that it was very difficult to do at that current location because it was a historical building. It was 4 floors. It was in some disrepair. There were some live exhibits also that were able to come in through the walls and the windows. So there was that to contend with also. And so in March of 2020, we announced that we would be closing the 311 Main Street location and building a new children's museum at 106 Parkway in Utica. And so because we were closing, we wanted to continue to remain an asset in the community and be able to bring the fun out into the community. And so that's where the mobile museum was launched. This was something that really kind of went full scale. It started with an 18-wheeler. I don't have CDL. I can't drive anything like that. So we had to scale it down a little bit to make it a little more realistic. But it was a concept that, like I said, we wanted to be able to go into the communities, go into the schools, go into other locations within our area, our region, and be able to bring that fun to children and families, and then also kind of a little marketing plug for us building the new museum and moving forward there. And so we launched the mobile museum in November of 21, and we had this was actually a group of kids from it's from a daycare. They were our last group visit at the museum. So they've been huge supporters, and they were absolutely fantastic and had such a ball when they came for this launch. So this was in November, and we started writing for the ARPA grants at the beginning of January. It was a really quick turnaround time from when we actually wrote the grant, got the approval, and started implementing what we had written to. And so that was also a fun process there. But here, the COVID, the little honeys with their masks on, it was a sad scenario, but obviously they're having themselves a good time, and it was lots of fun. What we wrote to specifically in the grant was to address the pandemic related learning that was missing out. At that point, we knew that there was approximately 9 months of learning that was missed out on there. And also to be able to provide the mobile museum to children who are at risk. So ICANN, being a human services agency and working with Children's Museum, our museum is actually being built and designed from a trauma-informed perspective and universal design, which is something that makes us a little bit different than other museums, because we're able to tap into our social workers, our clinicians, and really we're able to bring the information that we were getting from those community partners and filter it into all aspects of design as we're building the new museum, and then also for the mobile museum as well. To open access, again, to at-risk populations. So we chose the Utica Public Library and Jervis Public Library in Rome, because again, knowing that those were populations where they had significant, they were disproportionately impacted in significant ways, and being able to know where our target audience was, we wanted to service them. And then because we were new, obviously reaching out to museums and letting museums know that we were here, and this is a new initiative and something that we were looking forward to being able to promote. So with some of the funds, we were able to do some printing and being able to get this out into the public. We did social media posts. We put these posters and these flyers up throughout the community, and we're really able to sort of push it out in a variety of different ways. Our clients that we work with through ICANN, it was something that we presented to the mentors for them to be able to come and attend here, because obviously it was being offered to children and families for free. And so we had 2 different sessions at the Jervis Public Library during February break, and then 2 different sessions at Utica Public Library during spring break. And so kind of going back to the turnaround time, we were notified that we received the awards on the very last day of January, and February break came on February 22nd. So it was really helpful working with Fran and Ryan, because they were able to actually purchase the materials that we needed for this, which was a huge time saver, and not having to kind of manage that project. Some of the funds that some of the spending we used for the funds were cleaning supplies. Obviously, we wanted, during COVID, everyone to feel safe, everyone to feel comfortable. The printing supplies that we used for these materials that we had put throughout the community, and then also the staffing time to be able to run the program, staff the program, come up with the educational program part of it, and then also the consumables that we had when we went to the different libraries. And so we had some specific seek and finds that the marketing team had developed in coloring sheets, and then each child was also able to construct their own kaleidoscope. And so that was a really good learning experience for us, in having been out in the community kind of for the first time in a setting like a library and doing something like a kaleidoscope. We definitely learned that it's a task that's best suited for a particular age group. Obviously, with being at the library, we had parents and caregivers who were bringing their children, and so they were able to help just to make sure that safety was one of our main priorities. Obviously, kaleidoscopes had the little pieces at the end, there were little ones there who wanted to be able to make them, making sure that they didn't take the pieces and put the pieces in their mouth. Can you cut the tape for me? Librarians working with kids, you probably know how much kids love tape. So we went through an excessive amount. We thought we had enough. We did not, which made me feel good because they were literally wrapped in tape, and it would have took a short miracle to try to get those little pieces out once they were in there. But it was great to be able to work with the families too, one-on-one like that, and hearing them talk about the experience in doing this with their child, and really offering an opportunity for the parent or caregiver to bond with that child. Or if it was a client mentor relationship, knowing, because I come from ICANN and the human services world, knowing those skills that the client was able to work on too. Social skills of being in public, being able to have respect for space and personal body space. Also respect for younger children. If there was a 2 or 3-year-old at the table and a 10-year-old came up, not, just thinking that they had fair game to kind of plow that toddler over and take over their seat. So a lot of life skills were also being worked on when we were offering this program. So these are some of the images of the good times that they had. The colorful pieces over on the, here, that's called polygon octoplay. The kids can play with this much better than adults can. However, we did have one particular parent that came in and he took every single piece from the children and he built this amazing looking plane. And then the kids had a ball and they were able to ride on this plane, sit in it. It had what looked like a little propeller. And they were able to play with that until the kids actually got comfortable and said, like, I'm done and I want to take it apart and I want to do something different, which obviously open play is so important for children to be able to do. This chair is our wobble chair. This is one of the things that the kids beeline for because it's super fun. Parents and caregivers are afraid of it, but it actually is a really good core workout, and it's also good to stretch your neck. It looks like a top, so the bottom is really only that big, and you can spin in it. And when you first see it for the first time, you look at it and you think, I'm going to fall over if I get in that chair. And if you're my brother, you probably would, but he's the only one that's done that before, unless you like buck the chair. But the kids will just sit and they'll spin and they kind of get this rhythm. It's almost like you're pumping on a slide, but pumping on the chair. And then you'll just kind of see them like melt into the chair and they get like this really good groove. And it's very relaxing for them. So it's something that they sort of start off really rambunctious and they kind of get that energy out, and then they settle into it, and it's a really good experience for them. Pictures of the kaleidoscopes and their fun tape and their stickers that they got to use on there. And then also going to the Utica Public Library and having that experience there as well. It was definitely something that we were super thankful to CLRC for being able to provide these funds for us, and then also the libraries too, because it was such short notice, being able to just pick up the phone and call and say, hey, we have this opportunity to bring this to you, and the library being so accommodating and open for us to be able to bring that in, knowing that the libraries were also putting the kids first. They didn't care how loud the kids were while they were playing in the library. And so that was a really great feeling. And that was a really great experience for the parents too, that they didn't have to worry about shushing their child because they were being so boisterous and having themselves a good time. And so I think that was another takeaway of being able to kind of get in different settings and have those experiences for all of us, for staff, for parents, for children, for the library staff also. They provided some volunteers, which was really, really helpful, so that when we were doing those really one-to-one task opportunities with the kaleidoscope, volunteers were really helpful in being able to, again, keep safety at the forefront and help the kids in their creation as best they could. Is there information? If you don't know about the museum, please follow us. It's so exciting. We have so many really cool things that are going on. We're opening in the spring. Mobile museum is still out. We are focusing right now on some of these grant opportunities, some contracts that we have. We have a contract with the Utica City School District. So we're bringing the mobile into these schools and having the chance for children of all different levels to be able to engage. Always looking for different opportunities. So if you have an idea, please reach out, contact me, and we will absolutely happily work with you to try to continue to expand our services. We're developing our programming right now in anticipation for opening in the spring. And so really, the sky's the limit. We have so many opportunities to be able to bring so many different cool things, either physically to 106 Memorial or through the mobile museum. So we're super excited to be able to continue to push that out and really be that secondary educational setting for kids in our region and beyond. Any questions? So we have two chairs. We usually keep one in the vehicle that goes wherever we're headed. The other one's currently stationed in my office until the museum is open and we can have it in our rotunda. The Octoplay, it was a set, so we have things in bins, and the mobile was actually outfitted by a fabricator. Can't see it here, but on the other side. So this side here that opens, there's all shelving in there, and we have bin-based activities. And so some of them are related to motion and movement, some of them are creative construction, some of them are specific to children that might not be able to engage if we're going to a school. We had a little honey that had a brace, a cast all the way up to her thigh, and she was in a wheelchair. And so we have some things in there that they can engage with, whether it's coloring sheets or seek and finds. The van itself is actually an exhibit because the way that it was designed, there's so many different things for the kids to be able to look at. So the seek and find is really cute for them to be able to look at their little clipboard, their little pen, and go around the van and find all the different aspects that are on the graphic. Coloring sheets, manipulatives, things like that. So the vehicle itself isn't the experience as much as us taking everything out. And that's kind of a common question that we get of kids go in the van and they get the experience. And that was one of the ideas when it was an 18-wheeler. But when we scaled it back, it made more sense for us to load it up with all the fun and then take all that fun out so that we can be mobile, so that we can go into the schools, so that we can be outside. And it really depends on the weather and the location. We customize everything based on where we're going, based on the number of children, based on the age of the children. So it's really a unique experience every time we go out. Yes, so ICANN was providing marketing and development and some administrative services to start and to continue. I am an ICANN employee, but I'm kind of the only museum employee at this point. So when I say staff and help, I refer to the people that I can tap from ICANN to be able to do that. And so we actually extended it beyond ICANN. The entire museum, as I said, from that universal design trauma informed, we worked with individuals who worked in UCP, so developmental delays, developmental disabilities, Central Association for the Blind, really to try to cover as much as we possibly could so that everyone coming into the museum can be as welcomed and feel as comfortable, which is the whole goal of universal design. But then again, taking it to that extra layer of trauma-informed care and meeting with those individuals that we knew would be able to give us that specific piece of information. So an example of that, we have a gallery within the museum that's called the Cove. And so that particular gallery is specific to children that have any kind of additional need, but not just those children, it's for anyone. But everything in there, we were told by the clinicians, pink is a very calming color for children. And so one of the exhibits, we put a soft pink light. We have the entryway into is sort of like if you go through a car wash and they have those pieces. It started out as being a full experience walking through, but again, getting that information, children who've experienced trauma, they like to be able to see their exits. And so we took that concept, we took that design because it was unique and it was something that the children would enjoy. And we just cut it back on an angle. So you still have that experience, but now when they're sitting in that particular gallery, they can still see outside. And the building itself has floor to ceiling windows. So it's also different than some other museums, because sometimes you go into a museum and you kind of feel like you're in a casino or Walmart, and you don't really know that like it's raining and pouring outside until those doors open when you're walking back out. So that was something that we also wanted to keep in mind when we were building, is keeping those windows, keeping that beautiful natural light. And we also let that part inform our design too. So another one of the galleries is called Seasons. We live in upstate New York. We have 4 seasons. We love the 4 seasons and wanted to be able to see that when you're inside. So when you're in the Seasons gallery and you're engaging in the fall stall and you're looking outside, you're seeing the exact trees outside as you are inside when you're having fun in the gallery. Great question. Any other questions? Oh, thank you. Thank you. They are wonderful people because I'm highly uncomfortable when I do it. Oh, no, yeah. Yeah, yeah. The blooper reels are there for real. Yeah, it's a good time. It's a good time. So they definitely have some material to blackmail me, but thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you all for staying to the end for the last little piece here. My name is Scott Lipkowitz. I'm the Assistant Director and Digital Services Librarian at Onondaga Free Library. I've been working as an IT professional in academic, special, and public libraries for the past 6 years. As you probably realized during the AI panel, I am an inveterate computer nerd. I built my very first computer with my dad when I was 10 years old. It was a lot harder than when I ran this program. Because it's Halloween month, I figured you guys needed to know for some reason that I have 2 black cats. And they basically run the house, and my wife and I are the, hired help. And since I've been working in a public library setting in the last 3 years, I consider myself a technology educator and really focused on demystifying the machine, which is something that Erin, I believe, mentioned during the panel, right? Making it more accessible for people. And so for a while, I've been wanting to do a program where we didn't just teach people how to use Windows or how to use a mouse or how to type on a keyboard or search on the internet, but literally like, how do you build a computer? Like, what are all the components and how do they go together? And then how do you, understand the machine itself? And the reason for that is because most of the time computers manifest as literal black boxes. Here's just a selection of the ones you can currently buy. They're all black boxes. And for today's teens, and really for everybody today, it can't be a figurative black box where you don't have any sort of concept, kind of the theme that was in the panel earlier, right? You have to have some understanding of what's going on inside. So build your own computer was kind of like a dream project. And thanks to Rebecca, who kind of steered me towards the ARPA grants, and Ryan and Fran did, I don't think she's in the room, but she did Herculean efforts to get it all coordinated for me and everything. So I owe her a lot for helping me out getting the funding and everything. But build your own computer. The basic idea was participants, so teens in grades 5 through 12 and their families. So this is a family participatory program. Teens participated with their family members, not on their own. And basically just teach them how to assemble a computer, what are the capabilities, what are the different components that go into a computer, how they go together, then assemble the components into a fully functional machine. And then at the end of 4 weeks, as long as they came and actually built the computer with me, they got a free, fully functional computer. So basically build your own computer, taught people how to build their own computer. So they got a full, this is what the final product looked like, with the clear side off, even though it's not super easy to see all the components. But basically they got what at the time when we did all the purchasing in early 2022 were the most recent top of the line components. So each computer was, had a relatively high powered CPU. It had more than what you could buy off the shelf in memory. We got them a Wi-Fi enabled motherboard because not everybody has an Ethernet drop in their house. So this way they have a Wi-Fi access. And then we provide them with the peripheral. So a monitor, keyboard, and a mouse. And then a free instance of the Windows 10 home operating system, which is normally also an extra cost. So because even though the funding was very generous, I could really only fund 8 full machines plus a 9th tower that I assembled. So this way, while I was teaching them, I was using the same components that everybody in the room was using. So we opened up an application process, and participation was based on 3 factors. So the first factor I just mentioned was how many systems I could actually afford to purchase with the funding. Response to the application questions, which were basically kind of, why do you want to do this? Who would you be participating with? Any other special considerations, and then need. So I used the New York State Digital Equity Portal to search by census tract in our service area, and applicants were weighted more heavily if they came from a census tract where the number of computing devices in the home was low, or where there were no non-mobile computing devices, because we do have a lot of families in our service area where the only computing device is an iPad or somebody's track phone. So 8 families were selected. The tween teen participants ranged from 7 to 16. There were a few teens who didn't have a parent or guardian or otherwise caregiver that was able to participate with them. So our friends group, members from our friends group, the Friends of Onondaga Free Library, actually stepped in and helped participate. All of them, again, came from local census tracts where there was a significant percentage of households that didn't have a computer or non-mobile computing device. And it was also a very ethnic and gender diverse group. So normally, as I mentioned earlier, I teach a lot of coding classes at Onondaga Free Library, and it's usually always adult men and teen boys. But here we actually had 4 teen girls who participated, which was fantastic. And it was good to get them involved. So there was the full program ran for 4 weeks. So in the first week, kind of went over some larger theoretical ideas about computing. So for instance, we kind of went over the von Neumann architecture, which is what the kind of theoretical framework for how all modern computers actually work. So we kind of delved a little bit into that just so they kind of had an idea, because otherwise it's easy to say this is a memory module and this is a processor and this is a storage device, but what's the theory? How are they all communicating and how do they all work together? And why are they the way they are, right? Because they have a historical background. And then we practiced installing a CPU and the memory, since obviously the components that we bought, I only had one of all of those for each group, each family. And since they're delicate components, we figured they can test some on towers that I had cannibalized. So stuff that was slated for e-cycling at Onondaga Free Library, I ripped them all apart, and I had all the guts, all the components out that if you dropped the processor on the floor, it didn't matter because it was old and we weren't using it for anything at all. So these are pictures of the families practicing putting in the CPU and closing the socket that locks it in place, and then installing the memory. So they could do that a bunch. So we did that probably like everybody did about 10 times before we got to week 2, which is where we actually installed the processor and the memory, and we configured our the cases, and then we put the cooler on once the motherboard with the processor and the RAM were in the case. And if you notice here in the picture, I kind of tried to show them all like techniques. Like I've been building computers a long time. These are all things that I've learned to do. So like one thing that a lot of the kids thought was funny was that I told them to put the motherboard on the box while they install the memory, because you have to push down relatively hard to get it to snap in. And when I was 15, I broke a motherboard in half because I pushed it into my table, and they were a little more brittle. These are kind of more like durable modern motherboards, but it cracked in half, and my dad was not very happy, as you can understand. So I was like, yeah, the box will give you a little gift. So trying to give them also kind of techniques. The other thing, which I didn't mention in the earlier slide, that everybody got to also take home was they're on a blue mat, which is an anti-static mat. So basically just, and I don't know if you can see on my wrist there, I've got like a blue stripe. That's an anti-static wrist strap. So that way the human and the computer components are all grounded to the same electrical flow. So if you have any static electricity, you don't break anything. So they all got electrostatic mat, a wristband, and also a computer technician's toolkit. So kind of what I have in my office that I use at the library, they all got one of those to take home. So it includes like specialty tools for not just desktop computers, but also for like mobile devices and things like that. And here's some more of them, everybody putting in their, putting everything in. And then in the 3rd week, we installed the storage drive. So everybody got a 500 gigabyte SSD. Which now is actually not a lot of space, but for your personal computer, but relative for what they wanted to do. We wired up the power supply. We connected all the leads, and we talked a lot about electric safety with electricity, how to plug in the components. So this way you don't short the system when you boot it on. It used to be more of a thing when I was a kid. Now you could probably have not done it the way I showed them and you would have been fine. But we talked a lot about that, and also just a lot about you know, being safe with power supplies and things like that, because they are not, they are dangerous. So we talked a lot about that. And then we also, once we got everything set up, we booted into what's called the BIOS, so the basic input output system. It's like the thing that nobody goes into, but we kind of discussed that because if they were going to go on and troubleshoot things, or they were interested in a career in IT, one thing you need to know is how can you get the system to, how can you talk to the components if you can't get into the operating system, or how can you do things and configure things before you get into the operating system? So we talked a lot about what that is and booted up into that. Here's just a couple more pictures of them going through and putting in the power supply. And then that picture on the right there is, or the left for you guys, is the BIOS, right? So we did all these kind of configurations. And then the final step was we installed Windows. So they all got the experience of taking a USB and installing it on a computer that does not have an operating system. And what's that process like? And then how do you set it up, and how do you configure it for users and for families? So like, for instance, for the family on the right, it was a family of 5. So they set up users for everybody with different administrative privileges. So we kind of went over all of that sort of stuff. How do you configure this stuff? How do you troubleshoot? At the end, I did some participant feedback survey. So one 8th grader stated that he really enjoyed the class and he learned a lot. One of the 5th graders wrote, "Thank you for this amazing opportunity. I love putting the computer together. I hope to upgrade it in the future. I now know how to fix my own computer." And this was probably my favorite comment, which was the mother of 3, the family that you saw on the right and the left, said that her 15-year-old was eager to build a system of her own. Her 10-year-old was excited to actually be able to build it with his sister, and that he used to call himself the IT person at school. And so now he believes he is IT. And so I heard from her later, she stopped by the library like a couple of weeks later, and she said that he actually helped some other kid in school like fix a problem. So that was awesome. The last part too that I didn't mention, but this quote reminded me, is that we also kind of talked about where they could go next. So we bought them a more powerful system than they would have needed, and it was a large case. So they had a lot of room to expand. So if like they wanted to put a GPU in, if they wanted to upgrade with more memory or put in multiple drives. So I got them a case that could hold 4 drives. So if they really wanted to go and expand it out, they could do it. And then we also talked about the other big that's right, deal with those alerts all the time. The other big thing too is that talked about like why build your own computer, right? Like why not just buy one off the shelf? And other than the fact that you learn a lot by doing it and you kind of understand all the components, but a lot of it too is that cost. So like at home, I have a computer that has been alive for like 15 years because I just trade out components as I need to. And it's basically the same thing. I guess it's like that Raft of the Medusa thing. Is it really still the same computer? I don't know. But basically, right, like it's actually more cost effective to build your own machine. So one of the things I hope that they got out of it, other than just the kind of like really like introductory technical skill, was that they have the confidence to continue to upgrade those systems and maybe encourage their friends to also purchase their, build their own computers, because then they'll be able to, over the lifetime of the machine, it's much more cost effective. And, you always have a new computer, but, you don't have to throw away the power supply every time, or the case, or any of those other sorts of things. I also talk fast, so except I save some time. But I just wanted to say a big thank you to CLRC. Again, I could not have done it without it. Fran, thank you so much for doing all the ordering and helping me out with everything and making sure all the paperwork and everything was in order. So I really appreciate that. And also also for believing in the project. So I really appreciate that for Rebecca and Ryan and Fran for, believing in it, because it is kind of a weird program. And but I do hopefully, if anybody knows anybody that has some money laying around, some grant money, a lot of patrons have asked that I do it again. So I would love to if I get the funding in the future. So yeah, thank you. Thank you, guys. More questions? Yes, so for everything, it was a little under 1,200 for each system. So yeah, so I mean, part of it too is we bought in like relative bulk, so that helped keep the cost down a little bit per unit of what we were buying. Yeah, it's definitely like if you were going to just start doing it, and when you start, it is expensive. And then over the life, I've tracked like my machine that's been alive for 15 years. If I had like chucked it every 3 or 4, I would have spent way more than what it did. But it was about 1,200. So yes. Correct. Yeah. So they're part of the application process, and in all of our marketing was stressing like, it's a totally free computer. These don't cost anything, but you have to come build it yourself. That's the one caveat. And you have to be there every week, because nobody's going to be there to build it for you. So we did actually have the first week one family not show, and then the next person on the list bumped up, but everybody else came all 4 weeks. There were like some conflicts with school sports and things like that. So actually a couple of the families, I was just like, okay, well, come in the next night and we'll just do it. So we're accommodated like anybody who couldn't make it every week or on the designated night, to make sure that they got it. And we just kind of worked around people if they needed, accommodation. So.
How many people did you have apply for this?
In total, we had 32 families. Yeah. So there was, and I've heard from a lot of them that they're like, are you ever going to do it again? So yeah, there was a lot of interest and enthusiasm, and it was good too, because the families that came, it wasn't like they were there because, oh, at the end I get a free computer. They were actually, all the families were really enthusiastic about wanting to learn how to do it, and we're actually really engaged with and asked a lot of fantastic questions. And we're like as big computer nerds as I am. So it was like, it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
How long were the sessions, and do you feel like 4 weeks was enough, or did you try to pack it all in? 4 weeks?
It probably could have gone longer. Each session was 2 hours. But it probably could have gone longer. Like 8 families was like the kind of the limit of the funding, but it was also kind of the limit of like how many people, like it was just me. So if I did it again, I'd probably try to enlist another presenter who could help troubleshoot. Because when it, you know, does have troubleshoot, it's like one family, they plugged everything in, but nothing would power up. And so I'm trying to help them troubleshoot, but then there's another family. So that kind of, you know, it could have been, if it would have been longer, it would have been like, okay, well, we can leave this and we'll come back and we'll troubleshoot it next week. But because we were on like a tight, like 4-week schedule, it was, yeah. Yes, so actually, yeah, so I picked up when I did it, so I basically was like, okay, what we're gonna do is no one touches anything until I say touch it. And I will show you what it is. And like obviously with like some power cables, it's not a big deal, but the processors come with thermal paste pre-applied to the top. So basically when you put the cooler, the thing that's like blowing air or wicking away heat, it makes like a perfect like molecule to molecule bond between the top of the processor, and it doesn't overheat. And everyone touched the thermal paste because they picked, I was like, so this is what it looks like, and this is how it's going to go. And they all, well, the thermal paste is not on the processor, it's on the bottom of the cooler. So they all pick it up, and then they were all like, oh yeah, look at this, do it. Okay. So they did do that. So for that, I actually, the people that kind of made a mess of it, what I did was before the next session, I actually just removed all their processors, cleaned it all off, and reapplied thermal paste for them, and then did it. And then I thought about it, I was like, oh, actually it'd be good to show them how to do that. So I actually did it on one of the junk ones the following week too. And I was like, this is, you get a thing, and I would do that. So yeah, okay. All right, thanks. Rebecca's playing me off, so thank you.
Thank you all. It was really interesting. It's great to see our projects, because like, you know, we give out money for these projects. Sometimes, you know, it's way more gratifying to see what you guys were able to do and what you were able to accomplish. So that's really cool to see what you guys have been up to.